welcome back to the whole coin journey. It's safe to say that Bitcoin has had its fair share of skeptics over the years. You may have come across some arguments like Bitcoin is rat poison or only abides by the greater fool theory.
Heard it here first. Bitcoin is going to zero. Zero.
And many others. In this video, I had scoured the internet to find some of the top myths associated with Bitcoin. And hopefully, by the end of the video, we would have logically debunked some of those wild theories. Without further ado, let's get into it. So first up, we have myth number 1. If Bitcoin's value is ever changing, how can you even buy and sell stuff? Well, how you buy and sell stuff with Bitcoin is actually the easy part. But it is a valid argument that the price of Bitcoin does fluctuate more wildly. So holding the value of things can be more difficult. By expanding that for a second, currencies do just that same thing, albeit on a smaller scale. The price fluctuations are primarily hidden from everyday consumers like you and me because the pound price actually changes in relation to other currencies around the world. Bitcoin would be no different here. Quick shout out to the first ever Bitcoin transaction, by the way. But if we try to rearrange our thought process here and think not of whole Bitcoins, but instead of sats, it kind of makes sense. Let's take an example. Say a coffee, which can be purchased with Bitcoin. When you buy something with Bitcoin, like a coffee, the price is locked in at that moment. So take this coffee in the top left with a fiat price of £3. At the time of purchase, the system calculates that £3 equates to 3,463 sats. That's locked in for the next 10 minutes. Because Bitcoin payments can use the Lightning Network, which is a low fee layer built on top of Bitcoin, it settles payments instantly. So price swings during that transaction won't matter to you. Companies can then leverage payment processors like BitPay, Strike or OpenNode that convert Bitcoin back into their local fiat currencies in real time. So you get your coffee, the company gets their fiat money, all good. Buying with Bitcoin works exactly like your credit card in a foreign country. The store charges you a set amount, the system does the conversion instantly, and you don't need to worry about price fluctuations every second. Now in theory, that sounds practical, but let's say at 12 PM on a given day, I paid the equivalent of £3 for a coffee. And at 1 PM the same day, because of Bitcoin's price volatility, I'll now have to pay equivalent of £3.10 for that same coffee. Well, that's not actually too dissimilar to company practices in fiat currency now. Take a look at this news article on the right here that notes prices fluctuating the same day between regions within the UK for the same coffee product. It's crazy to think that depending on where you are in the UK, you can pay up to 5% more for your coffee. While price variance is more prominent now in Bitcoin and sats, in future, when Bitcoin potentially reaches mass adoption and even more maturity, we would see smaller price swings on a daily basis, leading to more stable prices which could rival fiat currencies of today. So myth number 2, a common one, Bitcoin is for criminals. So the notion that Bitcoin is for criminals has been floated around for a very long time. Because Bitcoin is pseudo-anonymous, many people believe that anonymity encourages bad actors to money launder and take part in criminal activities. One thing that is evident is that crypto criminality is unfortunately on the rise. According to this chart here from Chainalysis in 2025, they estimate that a total of 51 billion flowed from illicit wallets in 2024. While that number is astronomical, Bitcoin-related illicit activity only accounted for 0.14% of the on-chain volume. In that same article, it points out that Bitcoin's share of those illicit activities has significantly declined over time. In fact, stablecoins now constitute to about 63% of all criminal activity. So if we're talking about absolute terms here, we see that illicit activity grew over time, as you can see in the chart on the left. But crucially, illicit activity as a share of all crypto usage has shrunk, indicating that in total, legitimate crypto activity is growing at a faster rate than the more nefarious counterparts. Not only that, we are seeing of those illicit activities, Bitcoin's share in total has decreased over time. Look, there are always going to be criminals trying to game any system in any type of industry. Cash, for example, as you can see here, still remains the most frequently used mechanism used in criminal activity. While Bitcoin especially is pseudo-anonymous, it's fully on-chain and transparent. Law enforcement agencies can leverage blockchain forensics to trace illicit activities. More sophisticated criminals are now more likely to migrate to stablecoins or migrate to more privacy-focused cryptocurrencies like Monero or DeFi protocols. So is Bitcoin for criminals? Not really. Criminal usage of Bitcoin now is proportionally small in comparison to the whole cryptocurrency landscape. Most of crypto's illicit activity now shifts towards faster, less traceable alternatives, as mentioned before, like Monero. And Bitcoin's ledger gives investigators a significant forensic advantage in tracking down any illicit activity. Next up, we have, is Bitcoin bad for the environment? Now, there is no denying here that Bitcoin mining is an incredibly energy-intensive process. Quick recap, that there's two main purposes for Bitcoin mining in general. One, to permanently add transactions to the blockchain without permission from any entity, therefore creating the valuable trustless system that Bitcoin relies on. Two, to fairly distribute the 21 million coins in supply by rewarding new coins to miners who spend the real-world resources to secure the network. In this case, the real-world resource that we're talking about is electricity, which is needed to power the intensive processes that are making millions of attempts or hashes to validate the next Bitcoin block. Take a look at this chart here, indicating an ever-increasing rise of Bitcoin electricity consumption. As the Bitcoin network grows alongside the continual halving cycles, more processing power will definitely be needed to solve the ever-increasing complexity to achieve a Bitcoin reward. In direct response to the argument of is Bitcoin bad for the environment, although we see a rising energy trend, the true environmental impact is definitely difficult to assess. For one thing though, all aspects of the digital economy requires energy. As a simple thought experiment, let's take the global banking system as an example. If you think about how you would access cash nowadays, you'd have a few options. One, going to the ATM, or two, going to a local branch. In both scenarios, you need electricity to run the ATM, as well as to power branch lights, heating, adequate temperatures for staff, for example. Behind each branch is probably a head office that requires even more energy. As you see via the chart here, the rate of Bitcoin energy consumption is lower than that of traditional finance. So if Bitcoin is bad for the environment, then other ways of accessing your money is as bad, if not worse. So next up, we have myth number 4, investing in Bitcoin is gambling. I believe that many people who reference Bitcoin as a gamble fundamentally don't know how the technology works. Firstly, according to recent studies, that shows that Bitcoin price volatility has a time-varying correlation with other traditional risky assets, like the S&P 500. The studies also show that gamblers often engage in loss-chasing behavior, feeling the need to make back the money in which they put in, which escalates to higher risk-taking after losses that may go on and on. In contrast, investors typically are more risk-averse after their losses. While some individuals may continue to buy the dip after paper losses, generally, people don't continue to put in money into crypto if it keeps on dropping. Now, if we actually break down why Bitcoin is not gambling, if used responsibly, number 1, gambling typically involves unpredictable outcomes, like rolling a dice or being at the roulette table, where the odds are always against you. The house always wins is a famous term for a reason. Bitcoin, by contrast, can be thought of as an investment in a monetary network that is built on scarcity, with there only being a max supply of 21 million bitcoins, decentralization, where there's no single point of control, and also global adoption and utility. If you buy Bitcoin with a long-term outline, then this should not be conceived as gambling. What you are actually doing is you're allocating capital to an emerging form of money with a known monetary policy. Secondly, Bitcoin has outperformed every major asset over the last 10 years, despite its volatility, beating stocks, gold, bonds, and even property. It's been adopted by corporations like BlackRock and Fidelity, as well as nation states like El Salvador. And thirdly, volatility is generally common in early stage technologies. If you look at the charts here on the right, these are all logarithmic graphs of Bitcoin, Amazon, and PayPal. A logarithmic graph is essentially just a way to display price changes based on their percentage moves as opposed to their fixed dollar amounts. On a regular linear scale graph, going from 10 to 20 pounds looks the same as going from 100 to 110, even though the first move is 100% from 10 to 20, as opposed to 10% from 100 to 110. So a logarithmic graph will be smaller or larger depending on the percentage change, not just the price difference. You can see in these three charts an incredible growth percentage on all three, which would have been considered hugely volatile when the prices were moving. All of these graphs are not too dissimilar from one another. Two of them are stocks, one of them is Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's price movements are actually similar to some of the best stocks around today. Volatility itself can definitely be offset with strategies like dollar cost averaging or even taking a longer time horizon when investing. There are methods or ways to gamble in cryptocurrency. If you day trade Bitcoin with leverage, buy based on fear or hype, or even chase short-term profits, then yes, you are gambling. But that's not Bitcoin's fault, it's how you use it. There is no denying also that Bitcoin is still highly volatile, it's still in its early stages of global adoption, and there's always a risk of loss. But that's why we offset here with education, risk management, and longer time horizons. And finally, myth number 5, Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. I would rebuttal this first of all by saying, what is value? In classic economics, intrinsic value is the idea that an object has some kind of use, independent of just its price on the market, for example. Let's take gold, for example. Some people may purchase gold as a safe haven asset or because they believe the price will rise in future. But not only that, it has some real world use cases in jewellery, but also other industries like electronics or dentistry, for example. While small allocations are given to those areas of gold, it has a practical use in society. But in modern finance, value is entirely subjective. Let's take, for example, a key subjective argument in data. Data nowadays is considered incredibly valuable because it can provide insights to companies on ways to make money in future. If we talk about classical economics, you can't touch data like you can a gold watch or a gold ring. And at the end of the day, value comes from what number of pounds someone is willing to exchange for an item. Value means different things to different people. What might be valuable to me might not be valuable to you, and it's generally only what someone is willing to pay for something based on the utility that it provides them, its scarcity, and their ability to trust it. While it's true that Bitcoin does not have any intrinsic value in the old physical sense, but neither does fiat money, because it's only backed by government promises. I personally believe that Bitcoin's value comes from its decentralization, the fact that no single party actually has full control over it, its censorship resistance, the fact that you don't generally need permission to transact Bitcoin like you would a traditional bank account, and its true freedom from traditional inflation in the sense that it's capped at 21 million Bitcoins. And finally, it's genuinely a mechanism for cross-border transactions at a fraction of the cost. Look at this example below here that indicates the typical price of someone transacting £10,000 from the UK to Australia. The official exchange rate at the time of checking was £10,000, equating to 20,567 Australian dollars. Using a cross-border payment firm like the one you see here clearly states no transaction fee but has a lower exchange rate, meaning that £10,000 would actually equate to 20,334. Comparing the two, 233 Australian dollars has been lost somewhere during the chain. I generally do appreciate here that a company has to make money somewhere, and by facilitating the exchange they must take some level of payment off the top. But I'm simply using this as an example to point out that fees using fiat currency are more expensive at the time of delivery versus their crypto counterparts. So that's it. Here are the top 5 Bitcoin myths logically debunked. Overall, while there are some valid arguments as to why Bitcoin might not be for everybody, as a financial medium, it does have some tremendous benefits that are valid in this day and age. While some myths out there do exist, I can be sure that if I'm confronted with these arguments, I can direct them to this video for my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.